A hyper-realistic, cinematic courtroom scene. A 20-year-old man, Ethan Cole, in an orange prison uniform standing beside his lawyer, head slightly bowed, tears in his eyes, under harsh courtroom lighting. In the background, a distressed middle-aged woman, his mother, stands up from the back row, screaming through tears, reaching toward him as officers step in. The judge, a stern woman, looks down from the bench, her gavel frozen midair. The audience behind gasps. Reporters hold notepads. Warm light filters through tall courthouse windows, illuminating dust in the air. Emotional, dramatic, deeply human atmosphere. 8K ultra-realistic detail. Cinematic lighting. National Geographic photojournalism style. Shot depth of field. Tension and heartbreak in every face. And through the noise of it all, one thing lingered. A mother's cry. And the echo of the word monster that would never quite fade away. The courtroom stood still. No one moved. No one breathed. The echo of the gavel still hung in the air like thunder refusing to fade. Ethan Cole, 20 years old, accused, convicted, condemned, stood frozen as the bailiff approached him. The chains at his wrists rattled softly. The sound was small, but in that heavy silence, it might as well have been an explosion. His mother, Margaret Cole, stood in the back row, clutching that small silver cross she'd worn every day of the trial. Her hand shook so badly, she nearly dropped it. Her lips moved in a whisper no one could hear. A prayer, a plea. A mother's final attempt to reach the son the world had already judged. Ethan didn't look up, not until the officer's hand touched his shoulder. And then, for the briefest moment, he turned. Their eyes met, a mother and her child, separated by bars, judgment, and 25 years of what the world called justice. She tried to smile, but her mouth collapsed under the weight of grief. He tried to speak, but his throat closed, his breath catching on the tears he had held back since the first day of trial. The officer tugged gently, urging him toward the door marked custody. Ethan hesitated, and that's when she reached out, through the crowd, through the whispering, through the shame that had filled every headline. Her fingertips brushed against his orange sleeve. Just for a second that neither of them would ever forget. Her voice cracked the silence. It wasn't a shout, not this time. It was soft, broken, almost childlike. I'll wait for you, baby, no matter what they call you. That single line, that fragile promise, seemed to stop time. Even the reporters, scribbling in their notepads, froze. Even the judge, who had just called him a monster, lowered her gaze. Because in that moment, everyone in the room saw what the word monster couldn't erase. The unshakable bond between a mother and her son. Then the officer pulled Ethan away. The door shut behind him with a heavy clang. A sound that echoed through the courtroom like a closing chapter. Margaret's knees gave out. She sank onto the wooden bench, clutching her cross so tightly that it left an imprint in her palm. Her sobs filled the room, not loud but steady, raw and real. Reporters rushed outside, cameras flashing, trying to capture the story the world would soon consume. They'd write headlines like, "Monster sentenced," "Justice served." But none of them would write about her, about the mother who had spent every night praying that somehow, this was all a bad dream. When the courtroom finally emptied, she remained seated, alone, staring at the door where her son had vanished. The janitor swept the floor quietly around her. The bailiff whispered that it was time to go. But she didn't move. Not yet, because for her, the sentence wasn't 25 years. It was forever. Outside, the rain had stopped. Puddles reflected the courthouse lights, and the air was thick with the smell of wet asphalt. She stepped out slowly, clutching her cross to her chest, and looked up at the gray sky. People passed by, whispering, pointing. Some pitied her. Some blamed her. But she didn't hear them. All she could hear were his words, the ones he'd said as a boy, when life was still innocent, when monsters only lived under bed. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll always protect you." And now, she whispered back into the rain, "I know, sweetheart. I know." That night, she left the light on in his room, like she always had when he was late coming home. His jacket still hung by the door. His shoes still sat by the couch, exactly where he left them before the fire. She sat on his bed, picked up the old photo of him at 8 years old, toothy grin, missing front teeth, and smiled through her tears. "They don't know you like I do," she whispered. "You made a mistake, but you're still my boy." In the days that followed, the town argued about the verdict. Talk shows debated whether 25 years was too long or not long enough. Some said justice was served. Others said it was mercy. But none of it mattered to Margaret Cole, because to her, justice wasn't found in the judge's words or the courtroom's gavel. It was in the hope that, somewhere behind cold concrete walls and metal bars, her son would remember who he used to be. And maybe, just maybe, he'd find a way to be that boy again. Because love, true love, doesn't end in a courtroom. It doesn't care about verdicts or headlines. It doesn't see monsters. It only sees a child, lost, broken, and waiting to come home. They called him a monster. But monsters don't cry in silence. And mothers, they don't stop loving, even when the world tells them to. In the beginning, prison was nothing but noise, metal doors slamming, shouts echoing down concrete halls, the endless clatter of keys and footsteps. But for Ethan Cole, the loudest sound came when the noise stopped, when the cell door closed, when the world outside disappeared. That's when he heard it. The quiet, the kind that forced him to think, to remember, to feel. He started writing letters, not to beg, not to argue, not to ask for sympathy, just to speak the truth that he never could in court. His first letter began simply, "Mom, I know I hurt people. I know I can't take it back. But I want you to know, I remember who I was before that night." Then came another. "To the family I'll never meet, I'm sorry. I see your faces every time I close my eyes." Each page was filled with pieces of him. Fragments of the boy who used to laugh at the dinner table, who played baseball after school, who once promised his mother he'd make her proud. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't deserve it. But he kept writing every week, his handwriting steadier, his words softer. And every month, without fail, an envelope arrived. Inside, a single piece of paper, creased, worn, written in shaky cursive. It never said much. Just 3 words that never changed. "Still your mom." Those words became his anchor. He taped each letter to the wall beside his bed, one by one, until the concrete was covered. When nights grew too long, when the guilt clawed his chest, he'd look at them and whisper the words out loud. "Still your mom." The guards noticed he'd changed. He started helping in the library, volunteering to clean the chapel. He even joined a program teaching younger inmates how to read, because, as he told the chaplain, someone believed in me when no one else did. And on the outside, Margaret Cole kept her promise. She visited every month. She aged faster, her hair graying, her voice weaker, but her eyes never lost that quiet strength. Each time she saw him through glass, she'd smile, press her hand to the divider, and whisper, "You're still my boy." The world moved on. New crimes filled the headlines. The town stopped talking about the fire. But in that forgotten corner of the world, a mother and son built something the world couldn't understand. Redemption, not in words, but in love that refused to die. They called him a monster. But monsters don't write letters. They don't dream of better days. And they don't hold on to a love that survives through steel and silence. Sometimes, forgiveness doesn't come from the world. Sometimes, it comes from the one person who never stopped believing you could change.